Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Live with Colledge. Let me tell you, we are in for a treat tonight. We are thrilled to have Mr. Phil Moreno, Director of West Coast Recruitment at Dickinson College. He's going to be joining us tonight to walk through a couple of student profiles and how an admissions committee at Dickinson might view each applicant. Tonight's broadcast is part of our College Admission Literacy Series, a series dedicated to bringing students and families better information about higher education and better access to college admissions. My name is Tim Kent. I am the admission manager at Colledge, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be facilitating tonight's conversation with Phil, who is a seasoned admissions expert. We're really looking forward to an exciting fall for college admissions this year. And we know that many of you who are listening feel that the shifts in admissions ignited by the COVID pandemic is a source of confusion and complexity. Perhaps some of you students and parents are feeling that the stakes are higher than they've ever been. And so our purpose here tonight through our conversation with Phil is to help shed some new light on how complex every student's application and profile can be, and how admission officers sift through all of the information that you give and you provide to make their final admissions decision. So I'm really looking forward to what we have going. But first, a couple of little housekeeping notes that I'd like to cover before we get started. This session is being recorded, and we will send the recording out to all of you. So we really encourage you to be present and during the session, and know that you'll have that recording later on for your reference. And if you didn't sign up through the Eventbrite, but you would like the recording sent to you, we're going to put the link to the Eventbrite into the comments box right now. So please take a second to fill out the form, and you will get the recording. You will get your copy. Additionally, please hit like if you are finding this useful, so we know how we're doing during tonight's session. And then I also want to encourage all of you to please feel free to pop any questions that you have into the comments box as we go. We'll be monitoring the chat box throughout the conversation tonight, and I'm really excited to get to as many questions as we can at the end of the conversation this evening. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Phil Moreno. Phil, how's it going? Welcome.
Hey there, Tim. Good to see you.
Great to see you too. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. So before we get going, I'd love to share a little bit about your background, Phil, with our audience. I hope it doesn't embarrass you too much to hear some about your accolades over the years. So before landing at Dickinson, Phil spent 12 years working at the University of Redlands here in Southern California, starting in 2003 and ultimately becoming director of admissions before leaving to join Dickinson's admissions team in 2015. And he's about to celebrate his 6th year with Dickinson College. Phil also works with WACAC, which is the Western Association for College Admission Counseling, where he served as immediate past president, as well as RAC, which is the Regional Admissions Counselors for California, where he served as the treasurer. So Phil, by my calculations, that's 18 years of admissions experience. What an incredible career.
Yeah, the white hairs you can't see, they remind me that it has been 18 years.
That's good. The camera's doing its work to hide that. Phil, we're so delighted to have you this evening. Thank you again for taking the time to join us live. I just know that our viewers are going to come away with tremendous insight and feeling a lot more confident and knowledgeable about how this process works. So, one thing I thought would be a good place for us to start is that Dickinson College in Pennsylvania, in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, is a small liberal arts school. And I think that term, liberal arts, it's a term that we hear so often in the college landscape, but perhaps one that is misunderstood, particularly among students and families who are just beginning to familiarize themselves with all of the different college options that are out there and programs. So from my own experience, and I attended 2 amazing liberal arts colleges, Whitman College up in Washington, and then Claremont McKenna here in Southern California. From my experience, the liberal arts education is about a holistic academic experience. Schools with a liberal arts curriculum train its graduates to understand the issues of our society through a balanced and measured lens. By combining the methods of inquiry that they gain in quantitative courses with experience in meaningful and productive discourse that they learn in humanities, with the practical tools that they gain in the social sciences, I've seen graduates leave with a broadened understanding of the world in front of them and the tools to really succeed in any number of fields. At Dickinson, though, it really seems that there is a real focus and commitment within the liberal arts to global awareness, to sustainable practices, and hands-on experiential learning. Could you share a little more for us about what makes Dickinson unique within this small liberal arts landscape?
Well, Tim, I don't think a non-liberal arts major could have said and defined the liberal arts as well. I think that definition is really a beautiful encapsulation of the education that are places like Dickinson. And to your point, once families and students start engaging with these types of colleges, it can be hard to tell them apart. Practically a liberal arts education means that you're going to have multiple opportunities to continue to explore outside of your major, usually up to 14 courses, as opposed to, a professional institution, which will only allow 6 or 7. But at Dickinson, intentionally, what I've really come to enjoy about my experience with Dickinsonians is that we know exactly who we are. We are the first college in the United States founded for engagement. 6 days after the American Revolution, our founder is sitting on a porch in Philadelphia and saying that the American higher education system needs to change, that students needed to learn what they learn and then go back into their communities and give back for the common good. So Dickinson is all about engagement. We guarantee that our students will have research or internship before they graduate. The other thing, as you mentioned, is that global context. We were the first modern language program in the United States. We now have 13 languages, and we've taken it to the next level. It's not just about language proficiency for us, it's total immersion. It's contextual. That's why our international business and management major is comparative. It's why international studies creates the opportunity for students to choose from 18 programs that Dickinson runs itself. And then certainly over the last 25 to 30 years, the college has made tremendous investments in sustainability, so much so that we're not just talking sustainability now, we're doing sustainability. We do have a sustainability requirement. It's a place that talks about sustainable solutions, but I think we're most proud of the fact that for our one sustainability requirement, students can choose from 100 different courses that come from 41 of our 46 majors. So within the liberal arts, what's distinctive for us is a community focus on engagement, global awareness, and sustainable solutions.
Well, it sounds like, that the key word here is intentionality and about really thinking about the real world issues that our society is facing today and how to use the liberal arts lens, how to use the liberal arts approach to help give students the tools to, and actual experience at Dickinson to tackle those and make them really ready for the real world. And in that way, it sort of makes me think like Dickinson is the perfect place to see the liberal arts really come to life on campus.
Again, so eloquently said.
Thank you. So thinking about students, right, before we transition into thinking about a couple of applicant profiles, specific student mock profiles, I'm wondering if you could describe for us a prototypical Dickinsonian.
My role here working with West Coast students means that I get to work with exceptional students, because when you look at the data, 80% of students are going to go within 3 hours of home. It's only 2% that will go more than 1,500 miles. And that's what our Dickinsonians from the West Coast do. And they often tell me that they grew up where they grew up. They know it well. They have their circle of friends. It's a place that they've grown accustomed to. But the Dickinsonian in them knows that there's something more, knows that there's opportunities to engage in different experiences that may change the way they think about who they are, about what they want to do. And so for us, a Dickinsonian is someone who's open-minded, who's really thinking outside the box. And then the other thing that I really love about our community is that, and certainly as you start looking at East Coast liberal arts colleges, sometimes that selectivity comes with a competitive rigor. And our students are embracing an East Coast academic experience, but really with a West Coast collegial community. Our students have no pretentiousness. They're very much about competing with themselves and inspired by other Dickinsonians and what they achieve.
I mean, it's a really nice way to put it. And I think in particular, when you think about the sense of community, that's something that the liberal arts colleges can really offer in a way. And a community that allows, students to grow. These are critical growing years for young adults. And I think families and students want to feel comfortable and confident that they're going to be enrolling and taking that next step in education at a place where they can do that and where they're pushed by faculty and their peers and all of the people that support them at Dickinson to do that. Dickinson really sounds like an amazing place, Phil. And I'm wondering and hoping that there may be some folks in our audience tonight that may not have known much about Dickinson, but are now curious and maybe looking into it themselves. That's certainly one of the goals that we have in doing some of these sessions and getting to connect with amazing admissions officers like yourself.
Well, I appreciate that. Tim, one of the things I've learned in 20 years is that in this college admissions process, the rite of passage that is applying to college, information is power. So certainly engage where you need to.
Absolutely. And speaking of that information, I'm really excited to dive into some of these profiles with you. And so we're going to turn to that. We're going to look at a couple of mock students tonight and look through kind of the profiles that they present, as well as some transcripts to talk through, what might stand out to you in a committee at Dickinson, and maybe even what you might suggest this student focus or highlight in their application narrative. So first up, we have a student named Finn. He's applying from a Catholic high school in Oregon. Finn is a great and enthusiastic kid who is very interested in environmental sciences as well as world languages. A little bit more about Finn and his interests outside of the classroom. He's very passionate about music, particularly the jazz genre. He's been involved in a lot of bands, both at school and outside of school, and taken part in summer programs focused on jazz music. And that's really something that he is interested and excited to continue to pursue at the college that he chooses to attend. He's also an avid outdoorsman with a huge love for the environment. He has spent his spare time doing a lot of backpacking in the Pacific Northwest where he's from, but has also gotten an advanced open water certification for scuba diving and also has experience with underwater photography. He also has a love of travel and passion for learning world languages. In addition to extensive coursework in Spanish, which we'll see momentarily on his transcript, he's learning and practicing Portuguese and Arabic outside of school in his spare time. And another thing that I think is important to note, and I'd love for you to share some insights on this, Phil, as well, is that Finn has demonstrated shown some real demonstrated interest during this process in Dickinson. His family was able to make it to campus for a visit, and he also had a chance to do an interview while he was there. Now, demonstrated interest, I think, is an important term for us to know and understand, and I know it is weighed differently for different institutions. Could you share a little bit with our audience, Phil, about how Dickinson values demonstrated interest in this process?
I'm happy to, because I think you're right. It is a term that can be different. It depends. It's the most common answer to any question. But in particular, I like to share that for Dickinson, the reality of our applicant pool is that students are looking at many different colleges. And particularly when they start looking at liberal arts colleges, they may see some characteristics about our college that matches another institution. And so they add us to the list. And so I'm asking myself, when I read the application, is this student really interested in us? Certainly Finn has put together a great application, but what really hits home is that they've invested the time to come to campus or to interview, which means to me that this is a serious applicant, that this is someone who really knows our community and really interested in attending should we offer admission.
Thank you. That's such a helpful explanation, again, because it's a term that we hear, but it's hard to know, what it means in practice and the importance of it. So turning to Finn's GPA now, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. We'll go ahead and walk through, what we're looking at with Finn. So some of the things that I'm seeing are that he's really upped and increased his rigor over the years, and certainly coming down the pike for 12th grade. So, we've got an honors English class here in 10th grade, and then here into 11th grade, another honors class, and then an AP class. So we're looking at two honors and an AP, and then really in that 12th grade year, even upping the rigor even more, with several AP classes and an additional honors class coming down the pike for 12th grade. In terms of the GPA, one thing I'm really liking that I'm seeing, is the upward trend that we're kind of going up in GPA over the course, and he's getting stronger and stronger as he's going through his high school career. And you can see that sort of where his weighted GPA is, and unweighted GPA, we're looking at a 3.69 and a 3.83, but you can see the breakdown year by year that we're going up here as well. And then one thing I did, want to draw attention to, or sort of lack thereof, is that Finn is not planning to submit any ACT or SAT test scores. He does have some APs that he took that he's interested in submitting. But, one thing I wanted to kind of share with the audience, and Phil, have you touch on as well, is that Dickinson actually is a pioneer institution in the testing optional practices, and even I think now is going to the test-free option. So could you share a little bit about Dickinson's philosophy on testing and how it's culminated to where we are in 2021?
Yes, happy to. This is truly one of those areas where we've stood on the shoulders of giants, those who, way back in 1994, reckoned that a test score should not be one of the factors that we consider in admission, when there are other things in the application that can help inform the GPA, the grades that a student earns. And so way back before most of the students that are applying were born, the college made the decision to become test optional, meaning that students had the opportunity to submit scores on their own if they wanted to, and if they didn't, it didn't matter. We could still look at the transcript and make our decision about our applicant based on the information provided in the application. And then, as you mentioned, Tim, one of the things that we were very proud to do last year, matching folks like the UCs and the Cal States and even Caltech, we decided that with the opportunities to test, even take that test not being there, we didn't want students to be at a disadvantage, so we are test-free, and we're in the second year of a 3-year pilot to understand what that does to our applicant pool.
Well, I think, there's a lot of families out there that feel really excited about that prospect, to know that, they're going, and here we're seeing that it is about holistic review, and that certainly for places like Dickinson, it always has been, but knowing what that means in the test free, that they're really putting their best selves forward beyond the test. So speaking of that, we've had a chance to walk through here. What jumps out to you? What stands out to you about Phil's profile as a whole? And are there any things that you think Finn could really, draw attention to as he begins to build his application narrative?
Well, you said something I think that's very important, which is holistic contextual admissions. Your intro letting me know about Finn is that exactly what happens when I open up the common application and go into my system and see an applicant. I'm going to get to know that student before I get to this quantitative data. I'm going to know where they're from. I'm going to be excited that they're from, the Pacific Northwest. I'm going to be excited that they're from this school because I probably know this school very well. I may even have been able to visit before the pandemic. I'm going to know that they're interested in languages and they're interested in sustainability, that their very intentionality is matching everything that our community is about, right? I'm going to be excited that they visited campus, and really it's going to kind of magnify for me the importance of engagement, because I think this student, through their engagement, got to know us well and could craft this application. So that by the time I get to that transcript, I want Finn to have the best GPA possible. Right? And if he doesn't, which, this transcript shows improvement, I also have this affinity. So show me the rigor. Oh, there's the rigor. Starting to get into the sophomore year. Show me the B's go to A's, right? And so, exactly what you were highlighting in your transcript evaluation. And then I'm going to be very excited about that senior year. I'm going to know that perhaps the student is applying, if they're applying regular decision, that I'm going to have the opportunity in the midterm report to see the first grades from that first semester, or if they're applying early decision, to see the first grades from the quarter. And that for me is going to corroborate not only the AP courses, the performance there, to kind of help me again know that this student is not only just fit for our community, but it's an academic fit as well.
Well, I think, again, to kind of highlight that word, that term, holistic review, it's really refreshing probably for so many folks in the audience to hear that, that readers, they're really cheering for us when they get to know us as a person, especially when it feels like a good fit. And that that it's not just one thing that's going to make or break an application, that when you feel like you really get to know a student and they have so many things that they're sharing about them, even if they have a moment where they have, maybe a dip in grades. So many students experienced it with COVID. We know that. Or a moment where they really needed to settle into a school and weren't feeling ready to take those tougher AP or honors courses, but they're excited and game to do that later on. That it's never too late to really put your best foot forward with a good application. So it sounds like Finn could be a really great fit for Dickinson with everything that he brings to the table. So now transitioning. Oh, sorry. What was that, Phil?
No, I said absolutely. And what he put in that application, absolutely.
So now transitioning over to our second student, Haley. So Haley is a student who is applying from a private high school in the San Diego area. Haley is an impressive high school athlete who is interested in studying business, entrepreneurship, and also pre-law. She hopes to grow up to be a lawyer or a judge and is interested specifically in immigration law, as she is a first-generation American citizen and her parents immigrated from the Middle East. So like I mentioned, she's highly involved with athletics and soccer in particular. She's played soccer all her life and in high school at the club and JV varsity level, all 4 years. And in her upperclassmen years, she won MVP and most improved honors for both her club and varsity team and served as the varsity team captain senior year. So, while she has had a lot of accolades and success at the high school level for sports, she's not really looking to kind of, play at the varsity D3 or D1 level. Maybe is interested in club or intramural, but is definitely looking for a school with a lot of competitive sports and school spirit on campus and in the community. She spent the 3 summers during high school working as a camp counselor for a local soccer camp in the San Diego area. And as a junior and senior, she served on her high school spirit committee, promoting school pride through hosting pep rallies, putting up posters, and hosting other events. Given her background, she is proficient and fluent in 4 languages, which is very impressive. She speaks English, French, and Arabic at home, and then has also studied Spanish in school. And then she's also going to include some light volunteering at local homeless shelters and humane societies in her application. And one thing that, I want to add as well that she brought up in her essay is, kind of figuring out the balance with her love and passion for sports and soccer, but also knowing that she needs to commit time to school and to her academic performance. And she really had sort of a turning point around her junior year of realizing she wasn't putting as much time as she wanted to or needed to into school, and shifted those priorities, and that felt like a really important moment for her academically. So in terms of demonstrated interest, that point we were talking about earlier, Haley has reached out directly to the admission office via email to express her interest in the school, but hasn't been able to visit campus or do any form of interview the way Finn has. And now I'd like to take a look at her transcript here. So again, kind of doing a similar walkthrough the way we did with Finn. What I'm seeing in terms of rigor is not a ton of stuff here. We do have Spanish 1 advanced here, going down into the sophomore year, no honors or AP. And then into the junior year, she's working her way up in math, but again, no honors in AP. And I know that she's planning on taking one AP course in senior year, but not as much as Finn in the application in terms of rigor. And then another thing I'm seeing back onto the trend piece here is that we sort of have that mix in GPA, her cumulative GPA through 11th grade is 3.25. So we've got those mix of grades, but then she really, knocks it out of the park and here hones in on that strong academic performance second semester of 11th grade, which fits, her essay piece that I explained earlier about that kind of moment of clarity, light bulb moment for her in junior year that she writes about. And like I said earlier, not planning to submit test scores, but of course with Dickinson, that's not something in 2021 that Dickinson is worrying about with the test-free policy. So Phil, for you, what jumps out to you on Haley's profile?
One of the things I love about case studies is it hopefully peels back the curtain of a process that's shrouded in mystery.
Sure.
And one of the things that I also love is the profiles again that you've compiled about Haley. Because I think what Haley's application, the way you've described it, really identifies is the importance of the student owning their application, right? She probably knew that her academics were not where they could have been because of her engagement with sports and other things, and told us about it. And then we saw that senior year, the increased academic performance. I'll be candid, again, I'm hearing the profile, I'm excited. I'm hearing the connects, the 4 languages, right? I'm hearing the connects to, intentional places and her family background. I want to admit the student, and then I'll get to that transcript and I'm like, oh,
yeah,
okay, right. The other contextual thing that's important here is I know the high schools in California. I know them in my territory. So if I know that this is a really strong private high school where a majority of their students are going to a 4-year, I'm not as concerned about the lack of rigor early on, but I am going to be looking for it later, especially now, as Haley's indicated, she's turned the corner. So again, for this student, I'm looking for a strong midterm report, or because of our selectivity and over the last 6 years, we've admitted anywhere from 39 to about 47%, I might suggest this student consider an early decision round because of our selectivity being in that a little bit more able to take an applicant like Haley.
Phil, speaking of that, I'm wondering if you could shed a little bit more light on sort of the differences between sort of those application decisions, because we've got all of these terms that then get abbreviated even more and then they get thrown around, right? So we've got early decision, early action, early decision 2, regular decision. Could you explain a little bit of the difference of these pieces and how they function in this process for different students? Like why you might recommend early decision for a student like Haley?
Yeah, I think one of the first things you learn in this profession is that selective admissions is often about the institution. The level of selectivity means that the college or the university has to make decisions about themselves, and hence that hodgepodge of different rounds of admission. Early decision is usually a tool for enrollment that a college uses when they have a higher selectivity than the national average, which is about 67% is the national average, which I know is sometimes hard for families to hear on the West Coast, or even Cal State Long Beach, where I live, is a 20% admit rate. But those kinds of things, what they enable families to understand at each of the institutions is that, for example, at Dickinson, we're going to get 200 of our 600 students from early decision. Everyone else is going to come from the regular decision round. So if a student is willing to even, I would say, demonstrate their interest in us so much that they'll apply to us, and knowing that early decision is that binding admission, that if we admit them, they're coming, then that is something for us that we can say, yes, let's admit this student who may have an academic record that is not as competitive in the bigger pool, but because they're committed to doing well at our institution, they will apply early decision, that binding one. You may also hear early action, and that's the one that is a more open. You apply early, but early, but you still have the opportunity to say yes on National Candidate Reply Day, May 1. We no longer have that. We only have early decision 1, early decision 2, and regular decision.
Thank you for explaining that difference, and I think that's really helpful. And again, I think, as we begin to wrap up these two student profiles, one of the things that I imagine, is a lot of folks are feeling is that it's very refreshing to sort of have that moment, as you said, to pull back the curtain a little bit and know that this process is holistic, that admissions officers aren't sort of just looking for any reason to deny people, that it's actually quite the opposite, that it's about understanding these applicants as humans, as young adults who are striving to put their best foot forward, and that there's so many opportunities to show how special a student can be and how special, all the potential that they have. I think I love that piece that you shared, Phil, about, that you would even look sort of for a mid-year transcript, mid-year update in the senior year, that it's never too late, that the door is really, not closed, even if you have those bumps along the road. But of course, the important piece is that you give the context to these admission offices, that you are able to show and tell how you've grown, how you've come through that adversity and are on a trajectory upward. And so I think it's probably really refreshing to hear all of these pieces and remove some of the mystery of the process, open the doors a little bit, so to speak.
I certainly hope so. It's never about one thing, right? That's the lesson here. You want to give every piece of that application your all. That way, when you hit submit, it's the best face forward.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited now to move more to a question and answer format. And we're going to try to get to as many questions as we can. If you have more questions or feel that you need more help, please reach out to us directly. We'll give you the link to contact us in the comment box now. And also, it's Phil, I just have to say again, thank you so much for all the transparency and insight that you've provided to us. And so if you have any questions or are interested to learn more about Dickinson, we're going to put Phil's contact information into the comments box as well so that you can be in touch with him. So one question that, I think is probably on a lot of families' minds after what we've experienced with COVID is a lot of things shut down, right? And so many of the activities that young people really were invested in before the pandemic and really were passionate about, it was hard to do those things for a long period of time. So how has that sort of impacted admissions committees, viewing of profiles in this coming cycle?
I love working at the institution I do because we are regionally aware. In fact, this morning I was in a session with my colleagues learning about the different areas of the country and how they were impacted. We had a counselor from Georgia who said, "We've been open the whole time," right? We have had opportunities. And then we had counselors from DC saying, our students haven't had able to engage the way they have. So what you should know is that we're going to know, right? The institutions where it matters and the ones that you want to apply to do that holistic read are going to have that context. We were passing around a lot of ideas of grace. We're going to give you grace if you weren't able to participate in an activity because of COVID. You have to tell us, right? Put it in the application, right? But certainly when you say you can't have what we call commitment and leadership in those things, if that's lacking, we're going to know why, and we're not going to hold it against you. And we check ourselves by, again, knowing our regions well, right? It's a reason that I know that the Bay Area was much more locked down than parts of Los Angeles County and the Inland Empire here in Southern California.
So another question, that may be on families' minds, and something that we didn't touch on a lot, although I brought it up a little bit, was the essay. I think it can be sort of something that feels like when you mentioned no one thing, it matters more than anything else. Sometimes it may feel like the essay, if you write an incredible essay, then you're in, right? Or if if your essay doesn't come across, then all of a sudden they're like, I don't know. Could you share a little bit about maybe what admission officers are sort of looking for with that piece, especially if it's not sort of as much make or break as it maybe feels sometimes?
This is so relevant and kind of hits home because I spent prior to this week the last month and a half doing essay workshops at schools, providing feedback. And I think you're right, Tim. I think too often when you place all that focus on one, it kind of magnifies its importance. And the reality for us in the admissions office is we're looking for two things. First and foremost, can you write at the college level? The writing. Is it good writing? Right.
Yeah.
And then secondly, is there some kind of personality? Do I get a sense of what are you interested in? What you're telling me is very important for me understanding who you are. It's sometimes the heart of the application. But if I spend more than 3 to 5 minutes on it, something happened. I don't spend a lot of time on it. You can do that in a very succinct way, right? But I get it because you always hear the article, the Costco essay, they got everyone in the Ivy League. What they don't tell you is that student who had the Costco essay was also a first generation student supporting their family who was earning straight A's in a rigorous environment while doing dual enrollment. And we say it was a Costco essay, right? It's never one thing, but the heart is the essay.
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to the holistic review, but that the insight there is critical. That it is a little bit different. That you're thinking about the college level, but you're really trying to express yourself in an authentic way. Authenticity being really key.
Absolutely.
So as we head towards wrapping up, I think a good final question for you, Phil, is thinking about all of those rising seniors that are just starting school, and it's probably a tremendously challenging time, as this is when people are really getting back, and for a lot of seniors, and then especially younger students, juniors, sophomore, freshmen who haven't even been on campus in the high school experience. If you could offer one piece of wisdom, one piece of advice, what would you want students to know about this process?
Wow.
The big question, right?
Even the way you said it, I feel like there's music crescendoing right now, right?
Cue the music now.
Yeah, there it is. Kelsey, right? She's our puppet master. No, I really do believe for those students and families that get to apply to college, right? It's a tremendous privilege. And the reality of it is the skills that you learn in this process, in this rite of passage, are going to help you throughout the rest of your life. And the greatest thing that you can learn from this experience is owning your academic record. Just owning it. I know sometimes students are in these pressure cooker environments where they think there's a right type of college, that they have to do this, they have to do that. And the reality is you help me as your regional counselor by owning everything in your application, right? By owning that maybe your academic record wasn't strong because of your priorities being different, but now you're on to better academic experience. By owning the fact that perhaps you're going to apply test optional because you think your academic record is a better reflection of your ability. If you own your application, that authenticity is going to come through, and it's going to connect with me so that when it comes time to advocate for you, I'm going to do it because not only do I know you have the academic qualifications, but you put your entire heart into it, and I authentically know you're going to be a good fit for our institution.
Sage piece of wisdom. Cue the music again. Thank you so much for sharing that, Phil, and again for joining us. I really enjoyed the conversation and feel like I even walked away with a tremendous amount of new insight, and I'm sure our viewers are feeling that as well. So in closing, we're a group that's trying to reach as many families as we can to provide more information and better access. So, the opportunity that we had for you to join us tonight, Phil, and for everything you shared about Dickinson and shedding light on these case studies was truly amazing. I'd like to thank our audience so much for attending tonight. And I want to make sure that all of you are getting access to our plethora of free resources. So please make sure to follow us on social media. And if you felt that tonight was helpful, please consider sharing our content with those that you think could benefit. And we're really looking forward to seeing you at our next event, which is coming up right down the pike. Be sure to sign up for our Colledge Talk Dollars and Degrees on Thursday, September 9th at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time with our very own Jeff Tang, who is a former financial aid officer, and will be offering his expertise on what you need to know about financial aid, including FAFSA and the CSS profile, and giving our audience and resources for scholarships. And so if you're looking at paying for college at some point, this is a talk that you really can't afford to miss. So again, I want to thank our audience for joining us this evening. Phil, thank you to you for joining us. And I hope everybody has a wonderful evening and a great rest of your week, and happy applying.